Hey everybody, welcome to Obscurities and Miniatures. It's kind of a bittersweet video, but with the passing of Akira Toriyama, I figured, we ought to talk about it because, well, he was not only one of my favorite authors, but I'm sure a major influence on a lot of other people out there, especially if you're around my age, growing up in the 90s and 80s. His influence was absolutely felt all across the spectrum of fandoms and hobbies. And I mean, I'll be honest, he was a major influence on where I am today, basically, because it was through his work, and I don't even remember how I first found out. I'm going to guess that it was probably like a lot of you guys in that old Electronic Gaming Monthly EGM issue where they had a thing on Dragon Ball, and it just kind of spurred my interest from there. But I can remember owning, and I think I probably mentioned this in a video before, there is the Americanized version of the original Dragon Ball game that came out in the US called Dragon Power. I had wanted Dragon Quest or Dragon Warrior at the time for the holidays as a gift, and I got Dragon Power instead, which was just an awful westernization of the original Dragon Ball story. And oddly enough, continued to play it repeatedly through the years despite how much I hated it. But I just wanted to point out a really cool figure here. Irnkman's Minis, whose stuff has been on this channel many, many times, did a nice kind of tribute to the late great master, which coincidentally looks a lot like the cover artwork for the very last volume of the original Dragon Ball collected editions. Yes, I may not have the greatest cleanup of prints, but it is a nice figure nonetheless, and it's available free, which is even better. So if you want to get yourself one of these, we'll have that link down below. And I thought it would just be kind of fun. I feel like I've shown this before on this channel. Maybe I have, maybe I haven't. But I've had this book for a long time. And when I say a long time, I'm not kidding, because, well, the fact that it was only 1,000 yen should say something. It's not the thickest book. It's barely 100 pages. But check out that copyright date, 1991. I did get this in the probably mid to early 90s. I know I was probably still in high school when I got this book. And I didn't graduate till 96. I may have mentioned that at some point. So this book has been with me, and for the sheer amount of books that I tend to churn through, because, I do have limited space wherever I may have lived. This has survived my parents' houses, moves multiple times over, me going to college, starting a family, moving out on my own, getting various houses, but it's still been with me all these years, which is kind of funny. I don't really own much of the actual Dragon Ball manga anymore. I've given a lot of it away to students over the years that were really interested, and I figure, it's kind of a better home for it. I'd rather get the next generation interested and excited, and they were. Of course, I did have to make sure that it was rated G issues. They weren't too bad. But it's just kind of wild seeing, like the humble beginnings. And it's interesting that for as unique of style as he had, it doesn't strike me, at least at this point, overly manga-fied. There's obviously, various manga tropes at play. And having still own, I don't know where it is. I've got almost the entire run of Dr. Slump. My kids stole it and enjoyed it, so I can't complain. And you can see the binding on this book has seen better days, but it's because I would sit there in high school and I would just emulate and try to draw his stuff as best I could, like a lot of other people. And I mentioned before somewhere or other, my first exposure to Dragon Ball, I'm not even, other than the old goofy game, rehash, westernization. My parents went to France at one point, and probably again in the mid-90s, and picked up some stuff, but I found a copy of some really low quality, almost photocopy level of just poorly printed Thai and Vietnamese issues of Dragon Ball, which I then subsequently replaced with Tongli editions in Chinese before I ever learned Japanese, and then again subsequently replaced those as well. I loved these covers. Just the use of color in there, the design, the details, the cartooniness. Toriyama monsters. I mean, everybody loves Dragon Ball, and I mean, it was a major influence on me too, but it was his other stuff that really, like... I've got a video on Dragon Quest Monsters, the Toriyama art book, which is just absolutely one of those things that I've enjoyed. My son pulled it off and was always trying to draw his own versions of the monsters. So simple. That's like all there was at the time before you got all the palette swaps. I don't even know if 3 had been released yet in 1990. Okay, maybe. No, that's the TV stuff. No, that's a hero from 3, never mind. Torneko was 4? I don't remember. Dr. Slump was one of the first manga that I actually tried to read on my own in Japanese. Just, you know, it was so sight-based and visual gags. And I know my wife used to tease her brother that he looked like Arale's teacher, whose head is a giant onion. Somebody should make a tabletop Arale figure. I need me one of those. I always had wished that Toriyama had done more picture books, like children's books. I feel like there was one. I could be misimagining things. This is still one of my favorite books he did. And it's funny enough with the games and movies coming. I had the original release when it first came out, and then I don't know what happened to it, so I had to go get it for 100 yen. I actually like a lot of his post Dragon Ball artwork more than his Dragon Ball stuff. Kajika was an interesting one, I thought, because it felt like, you know, he was going for a almost Mignola-esque kind of keeping things clean, less detail. But, you know, anytime we had Bird Studio and Toriyama releasing a new book was cause to celebrate, I thought. Personally, I can't wait to see the movie. I'm sure it's going to be a big ticket seller. Jaco. Sometimes I always wonder if these old men in these books were supposed to be stand-ins for Toriyama himself. Again, just the cleanliness of the lines. I've always liked it. The tech work. Some of the characters from Dragon Ball, I think, show up in this point. In this one. I don't even know if this one's been released in English. Probably. There's definitely something to be said for his style of art. It will be missed. Hopefully with his studio still going, we're going to see some stuff done in tribute. Actually, I'm kind of looking forward to seeing what kind of tribute work gets made in honor of him. I think it'll be kind of nice to see just the outpouring from various artists. But yeah, I mean, it's just amazing what an impact this guy had on so many of us. I mean, when I was in college, Toriyama's work was like that bonding thing. And I can remember I had roommates. I had an interesting roommate setup when I was in college. I actually lived in a apartment building that was next to the school that all the international students were going to, and it was too expensive to live on campus there, so they all lived in this apartment building. And I don't even know how I discovered it, but I ended up with roommates. One of them told me about it. So I had a Saudi Arabian roommate originally, and a South Korean, and a Japanese guy. And Dragon Ball and Toriyama's work was what kind of bonded us all together. And so I remember we were all sitting around having a good time talking about, you know, what we liked and what we enjoyed. And of course, all of us were already exposed to that. And it was kind of like just such a cool moment. And one of those things I remember, that was my first night living on my own, and we're all sitting around having a good time drinking and talking about, Japanese comics. I don't even know how we got on the subject, probably because I brought a bunch and had some with me there. But yeah, I mean, that was like one of those things, is like everybody who would come to our place, from whatever continent, whatever country, and I think I had roommates from just about every continent except Australia. And we did have an Egyptian guy that was staying with us on the couch for a week, so I'm going to count that. That is my one actual roommate that lived with us for some time, so I can say that I did have somebody from every continent at least staying in my place at one point or another. But yeah, it's just kind of cool, all my buddies that were from South America, Central America, Dragon Ball was there. All my friends from Europe we met, Dragon Ball was part of their lives. And just to see that somebody was able to touch so many people is just absolutely super cool. And, rather than dwell on the sadness, because, I thought the dude would be around forever. 68's not that old. It's just really cool to see how many people had some kind of impactful memory. This was the man that I wanted to emulate with my drawing. Maybe if I'm brave enough one day, I will see if I can dig out some old artwork and dare to show it on here, but that would be quite frightening. I'm not at that point yet. But yeah, like I said, just wanted to share my thoughts and share some of my favorite things by him. And like I said, if you guys are interested, getting it back to the tabletop, we'll have a link for one last farewell from Goku while we're at it. So with that said, this has been High Lord Tamberlay with Obscurities and Miniatures, saying thanks for watching, and we'll see you back here soon. Bye-bye.